Hi everyone, welcome back to our ongoing series on how to build a life operating system in Notion. Today is a really important one. As of late has become the most highly requested one, the one people are most eagerly anticipating, so I'm excited to finally release this one. Today's episode is going to be about weekly reviews, and the next episode will be about monthly and quarterly reviews. So this is a concept, the idea of the weekly review and the monthly review is going to take everything we've been talking about in all the previous episodes and bring it sort of to a culmination, because the weekly review is essential to keeping the whole system on track. It is so important. It is, for many people, one of the hardest things to do, but once you get into the rhythm and once you see what it's enabling, the power it brings to a system, I think you'll find that this is something not to be missed and to make an absolute rigid part of your schedule, because the behaviors you do around the system are as much a part of the system as the software itself. So you need to design your personal behaviors as part of the system so that your interaction and the software's teeing things up and channeling and focusing are all part of the same interrelated operation. So the weekly review at a fundamental level is a tactical implementation, whereas the monthly review is much more strategic. And month to month, you're sort of doing a strategic assessment of how your aspirations are aligning with the broad strategic game plan. Week to week, you're trusting that your monthly game plan is the right one, and that's taken care of. So it removes the burden of thinking about the strategic assessment. And your job on a week-to-week basis is to put a tactical game plan, an implementation in play for the upcoming week. And that's all you're focused on. At the same time, you're documenting what you learned, the achievements, the disappointments of the past week. So those will roll up within the Notion databases to the monthly review, the quarterly review, and the annual review. And you're not going to remember all these little victories and disappointments along the way when you're reflecting back from the month, from the quarter, and certainly from the year. But if you document them as you go week to week, then those learnings, those insights, and those highs and lows in that journey will be very vividly presented to you in the form of database rollups, which I'll show you when we get to that in the next video. But by planning your tactical execution week to week, and always having that game plan in place, it means the active tasks that are queued up in your action item database will be the right actions. And you can trust that by doing the things that feed into your daily window every single day, you are on track to the higher aspirations. You don't have to worry about a mismatch or worry about spending all this time in the wrong direction, because your monthly review has aligned everything. The alignment zone dashboard has put everything in alignment for those higher level aspirations. Now your job in the weekly review is to look at, of all the very specific things that need to be executed, what can you get done this week? What is dependent on something else? And how can you get as far through that tactical action plan as possible? And the weekly review is the protocol that sets that all up, so that when you show up at your desk in the morning, you automatically rolling into your today action view, you have first, second, third priority, you know those are the right things, and you can execute on them without having to think about it or wonder if you're even on track. You know you're on track if you're doing your weekly and monthly reviews. But before we dive in, I know this is one of the hardest things for some people to implement, to make part of their routine. And I just want to tell you, this is a fundamental part of the system. You have to do this if you want your system to work effectively. If you want your day-to-day actions to deliver on the long-term aspirations and goals and things you want to achieve with your life. If you want to become the person that you're aiming to become, this is an essential part of the system, because this keeps the train on the track. This keeps you going in the right direction. If parts of the system are starting to get friction or break down, if you catch it week to week, you bring it back in line, it's no big deal. It's easy to fix, and you don't lose any momentum because you're just fixing it as you go. In my schedule, I schedule this for late afternoon every Friday. If I miss that, sometimes Fridays are super busy, I do miss it, then I'll try to catch it on the weekend, but I have an absolute rule. If Monday morning comes around and I have not done my weekend review, then I must absolutely do it first thing Monday morning, nothing else comes before it. So if I don't want to have to start my Monday doing last week's wind up, then I know I need to take care of it at least over the weekend, but ideally end of day Friday. So I'd encourage you to do the same. Find the time that works for you. Sometimes for some people, Monday morning is the best time, in which case embrace that. Just commit to it, because this is fundamental to making the system work. So now let's dive in and I'll show you what it's all about. So here we are back in our command center, and I just want to take a quick peek to mention something in our flowchart. As you recall, we did this flowchart. If this is the first time you've seen this, there's a previous episode that shows you how to design a flowchart around your system to think of it from a high-level systems thinking perspective. In particular, I just want to zero in on these two stacks of databases, because this is very much what we're getting into today. So the core stack of databases is our action items or tasks, with the projects above that, goal outcomes, vision goals, pillars, and guiding principles. We have over here the cycles. The cycles are the reviews. The daily tracking is not so much a review, that's the data we're entering on a day-to-day basis. The weekly review largely aligns with projects. And then the monthly review largely aligns with goal outcomes. What this means is the weekly review is going to primarily be focused on the tactical implementation of aligning projects with action items, making sure every project is queued up with the right action items and we've got stuff happening for each project every week. The monthly review, which we'll get into in the next video, is largely making sure the goal outcomes and the vision goals are aligned with the right projects and that the projects are queued up to deliver on the goal outcomes. Just wanted to put that in context. So now from the command center, I've made one addition to the organization over here. As we've talked about previously, I have a dashboards folder for all my dashboards. I have a pillars folder for the pillars and the pillar support, databases and pages. I have a pipelines folder for the pipelines that have action items, action-oriented processes underway. So the action items task database itself, projects, goal outcomes, value goals, and production. And then I have the vaults, which is knowledge management and the storage, capture, and development of information and knowledge. I've added a new one. I've put the review cycles and the cycle periods all in their own folder just for better organization. So we've got daily tracking, weeks, months, quarters, and then I have a cycle review gallery, which includes all of the weeks, months, and quarters, but just has a nice visual depiction because for each month, part of the review is putting in an image that captures or depicts some important aspect of that week or month, and it gives me a nice sort of photo album or sort of reflection with visual cues. So I kind of like that, but it's not really where the action takes place. And I put my accomplishments database and my disappointments database in this new folder as well. Just a little housekeeping there, but I think that organizes things a little bit better. But primarily I access this through the alignment zone, which we've seen in several of the previous videos. And if you're new to the series, I would recommend you take a look at the alignment zone video because that talks a lot about the guiding principles, which are the high-level guiding lights and values that we're building our whole life and operations around. And that plays into this. The rest of it is all covered in other videos. So anything that doesn't make sense, there's almost certainly a previous video that covers that particular section in greater depth. So we go into the review cycles here, which is where the review databases and processes take place. And I call them insights. So this is the insight area. We have daily insight, which is the daily tracking. We've talked about this in the previous video. Day to day, we're capturing information about the things that matter to us, measuring progress and collecting information that's going to help us assess our performance in retrospect. So right here we have the gallery view that we just saw from the side folder, but we have it in a toggle form because sometimes it's nice just to look back at those visual highlights. And sometimes I access the weekly or monthly reviews from there, but primarily I do it here because we can see things building up in aggregate, and that's really valuable. So I always have the current with the two arrows pointing in. It helps me select it from a long list when I'm tagging a relational database. I actually skipped last week's review, which was very painful to me because it's such an ingrained part of my process, but I skipped it so that we could go through it during today's video. So going into the review for last week, even though today's Wednesday and I should have done this last Friday or over the weekend, I wanted to share this process with you, so I left this one empty. So what you'll first, let me just give you a quick glance. It's essentially a checklist, but it's not just any checklist, as we'll get into. At first, on the top, we see a set of database fields for the weekly review. At the end of the week, you want to take an image that in some way represents the week, either a big success or a noteworthy moment or a meaningful happening, either a photograph or find an illustration that sort of captures the essence of it. The ability to jog your memory of things that happened will make your life feel much more rich and rewarding because it won't just be a blur that you can just barely make out. It'll be something with vivid depictions that you can look through fondly and sort of reminisce. A little reminder like that will bring back a whole flood of memories and emotions tied to your experiences. So it's really great to capture a visual depiction of the week. I did some new things with the podcast in the past week. So I have an image here that sort of reminds me that the podcast was getting some new life and some new direction. But more importantly for today's video, we come in here and we see a lot of this information is already filled out, which is amazing. A big part part of the trick of doing weekly reviews effectively is to keep them short. If it's a long, cumbersome process, it's going to be very hard to get yourself to do this consistently because life gets busy. But if you can keep it tight, and to me, tight is 20 to 30 minutes, that's totally manageable for the massive benefits of this process. Keeping it that tight will let you do a very thorough and significant review and realignment of your week, teeing up the week to come and documenting what you need to know from the past week for future reviews at a higher level. And it's just going to give you a perspective that you would never have otherwise. So that's enough time to do a thorough review, but not so much time it's going to be a burden, it's going to be a chore, and you're going to dread it. The way you do this is you design it for maximum efficiency. You've got to design this for efficiency. So the first element here is that there's no duplication between the weekly, monthly, and quarterly reviews. Every element in each is only done once in that one segment, and it depends on how frequently it needs to be done. So week to week is very tactical. It's lining up your daily actions that are consistent with the projects that have been prioritized already in the monthly review. And then the monthly review is looking at projects being aligned with goal outcomes. And then the quarterly review is looking at value goals being aligned with goal outcomes. So you're doing one specific slice at the relevant level for each of these. There's no duplication. So sometimes you'll be doing these back to back. You might be doing a weekly and monthly review at the same time, and you just don't want to be doing the same thing over. There's zero duplication. That's one of the ways you keep it short. Another way you keep it short is you have roll-ups. So when we're doing the daily tracking, if you look at the bottom down here, let's go to the daily tracking for a minute. So I usually access the daily tracking from here, and I've got my daily slice for the 1 day, updating it as I go through the day. So the place where I actually enter the new slice is right here. I'll go to new, and this is filtered by today. So it automatically enters the current date. Now the next thing I do is I title it. So let's say May 20th. And then the very next thing I do is I go to the week's relational link to the week's database. And I will look for the double arrows because that always indicates the current week. So it's very quick to pick it out. I click that. And now I've linked this day of data tracking to that week. Then I'll go through and I'll enter the data as necessary. What this enables is when we're back in the alignment zone doing our weekly review, we have every day from that week already entered. This is already done. So you come in, these are entered. And because these are entered, all of these with the little magnifying glass are roll-ups. These automatically bring the data in. It's already completed. So workouts, I did 71% of the days that week I did my workout. Sleep time, this shows me the range of sleep times, the amount of sleep I got each night for that week, and an average 7.5, which is not too bad, but I know I should be doing a little better. So it gives me a perspective on how I'm doing and how I can improve. Weight, it shows me the weight range of each day throughout the week and the average weight for the week, which becomes valuable when we're looking at week-to-week averages in a table view and comparing the trend over time. And then output, this is the percent of, at the end of every day, I'll enter the percent of work I did relative to the work I had intended to accomplish that day. This particular week, last week, on a day-to-day basis, on average, I achieved 84% of the work that I had intended to achieve, which really isn't bad, but I think I can do better. So I'm going to aim for 90% next week. That's my goal, is to hit that 90% mark. That means I got to stay on track even more during the week when I'm working hour to hour. And I've also got the range here because sometimes outliers are worth noting. So this rolls up automatically. That's done as soon as I open this page, just because I'm doing my daily tracking. Now, when I create a new week, there are two things I enter. I'm just creating it at the beginning of the week so I can tag daily tracking to it. I'm not doing much when I create it. The two things I do when I create it is I set an objective for the week and I set a focus for the week. My focus is product development. I'm working on some products that are going to enhance my ability to teach and bring the ideas I want to share to more people. So product development was the focus this week. Objectives with a combination of doing a couple guest posts that I've been developing for other platforms that I've been invited to share some ideas and videos with, and to start building the platform. Part of this product development is building a new platform to share these products on. So objectives and focus, very simple, 1 to 3 words. That's all you enter, but it gives you a very specific, milestone and objective that sets that week apart from every other week. You want to identify your intentions and what is your priority. That sets the priority for the week. Other than that, it's done when I set it up at the end of the previous week. Now, when I come into it at this point, I've actually done a little bit. So typically this will be empty, gratitude will be empty, and the accomplishments may or may not be empty. I may be entering accomplishments as they happen throughout the week, but if I haven't, when I get to this point of the review, I'm going to enter accomplishments. Say there's something else. This is a database, by the way. So that was in our review cycles folder over here, a database of accomplishments and disappointments. It's a very simple database, as I'll show you right here. If you want to enter a a new item, all you do is click here. I don't even really go into the database. I just enter it from the week view here. So say one big victory. Some big victory happened that I was pursuing and it finally came through this week. So I click on that, it adds that. Now that's not really entered other than the title. So I'll click on that. This is all the achievement database has, but I'll tag the month to it. Again, with the 2 arrows, so it's easy to find. I'll tag the quarter. Again, it has the 2 arrows, so it's easy to find. And then what worked, what learnings. Persistence paid off. That's it, you're done. So you click back out of that and you're back here. Now it's entered, it's complete. That will be valuable in future higher level reviews. But right now we're just entering. End of week is a good time to reflect on what victories you had during that week or successes and enter them in this database. And I'm going to delete that because that's not a real one. And then disappointments. I find that I more often have an accomplishment that's worth entering in the database than disappointments, largely because I'm sort of optimistic. And if I see a disappointment, it's just a setback and I'm still working on it. You know, failure is the process to achievement. So I don't see disappointments as a constant thing I have to mark. But if there's a significant standalone disappointment, something you were pursuing that just didn't come through, enter that. And then you similarly note your lesson, what you learned from that disappointment. And then that database will be valuable looking at higher levels down the road. Other than that, we will rank our effectiveness. 3 is average. 4 or 2 or whatever it is relative to the average. Gratitude, enter something you're grateful for, and that's it. So this is fast. Most of it's already filled out. You enter a few things and you're done with that super fast. All right, now you scroll down here. I'm going to erase this. When you first come to this, it's empty. It's just blank, but we've got a template. So all we have to do is hit the template button here and we get the whole template filled in. And as we go through this, I'll show you how cool it is that all of this design can come through in a single template. Now we have the action items completed this week under this toggle. We open the toggle. Now the one thing we have to do is we have to go to the filter and we have to set the beginning and ending date. The really nice feature they added that lets a template have a self-referencing feature isn't going to work in this instance because we're setting it for a specific date. So when we come back in the future, we can see it referring to this exact date, not just the past 7 days. Plus, sometimes we're not doing it on the exact final day of the week, so we have to set the exact dates. This is the week of May 11th through 17th that we're doing the review for. So due date is on or after the 11th, and then due date is on or before the exact date of the 17th. And that filters it through. Now we'll see it's done is checked. This time we want to see the things that have been checked as completed. Priority is not quick because those are just 2 or 3 minute items that were quick hits that we don't need to look at in our review. Owner contains me. That's if you're sharing this task database with other people. And private is not checked just because I do all these public demonstrations and I have a lot of private task items that I don't want to just broadcast on YouTube. So I have a filter just for that. For the sake of these demonstrations, you obviously don't need that. And so that also means that my list would be a lot longer than this. I have a lot of private items that I just didn't want to put in a YouTube video, but this is enough to show you how the system works and how the review works. You get the idea. We're sorting by priority and then by due date. So all the schedules are together, first priority, and then so forth. Obviously, with a longer list, the organization is even more valuable. But this will let you review very easily and quickly what you accomplished. And usually, this is really hard to do. It's hard to, at the end of a week, think back, okay, what are all the things I accomplished this week? Well, this way, you have the list organized and sorted by priority and by due date, and it's right there. It jogs your memory, and you're like, oh yeah, I really did get quite a bit done this week. That was pretty good. Then you close that, and now we roll into the organizational structure of our weekly review, which is, of course, pillars, pipelines, and vaults, the same organizational structure that we organize the Notion assets and a lot of the other dashboards and functional areas. So this is a theme. The pillars, pipelines, and vaults theme is something that goes throughout. And when I finally finish each component, I do the full video explaining the overview of pillars, pipelines, and vaults. This will make even more sense, but you can see it's integrated into the whole system as we go. So first we go through the pillars, which are the high level zones of your life that need maintenance, that need to be just kept on track. On the weekly level, we're not really managing the pillars database. This is just a general category of the high level, high functioning visions and values of your life. It's more at the quarterly level that we'll actually consider any refinements to the actual pillars themselves. But by pillars here, I mean not so much the pillars database, but just the high level vision, value-oriented parts of your life. And I believe it's important every week to do a quick review of your guiding principles. These are assessed maybe once a year and maybe tweaked slightly as you go. But the guiding principles I talked about in the alignment zone video. So if you want more information on this, check my alignment zone video about guiding principles. But it basically sort of lays out your values, your foundational core, your why and your purpose, your drive and motivation, and the central elements of your life. life. It's sort of the North Star and in fact, the guiding principles. So that's all distilled into a very succinct summary. It's very short. It's just a matter of phrases and a few sentences. At the beginning of every weekly review, I just go and read that. It takes 45 seconds or less, 30 seconds. Just do that because there's no point in developing this, going through this reflection process and defining these core values and core principles of your life if you then just put them in a note somewhere and you never look at them because you're going to forget them. You're going to just drift away from them. Just a quick read, even a skim at the beginning of your weekly review is going to keep them front and center. It's going to keep them as what they're intended to be, which is guiding principles, guiding everything you do. So I think weekly is the time to just do a quick skim of those, keep them fresh, remember what they are. So you just check that off and you get that nice satisfying tactile response of that checkbox filling and that cross out and that strike through line. Then we do the weekly reflections. And in most cases, I've already done this above. This is entering the accomplishments and the disappointments in that database if I've already done it. If I haven't done it, I do it now. Otherwise, I get 2 quick check marks and I'm well into my review very quickly. Now, I just think for a moment, I ask myself, were there any noteworthy highs other than the accomplishment? Anything that were just sort of nice occurrences, anything that kind of just was a nice high for the week that are worth jotting down. So, saw an old friend. Now I would name the person, but I'm just making these up as examples. Finished XYZ book. So, anything noteworthy, just jot it down and you'll have this nice history that you can go back and review should you want to. But more importantly, it prompts you to think, were there any nice moments throughout the week? And otherwise it would just be a blur and you would have experienced it and lost it and never again. But now at least you get to relive it a moment right now and it's part of your assessment. At the same time, you're going to ask, were there any lows or struggles? Hard getting started each day, or just put in whatever it was, feeling down. Note them, address them, be very deliberate and conscious about what's happening in your life. You don't necessarily have to solve it, but just at this point, you're just asking yourself the question and being aware of it. And then ask what you learned this week, Note anything that you discovered, either facts or ideas you discovered, or revelations or meaning you discovered behind things. Just ask yourself the question. Don't spend a lot of time on this. This could be a long exercise. This is just a quick question and jot down anything that comes to mind quickly. So this is not something to get bogged down in. It's just a prompt to see if when you ask the question, anything flows out. It's also okay to leave them blank in some weeks, but you should not be leaving them blank every week. Pipelines, now we get into the action. So here we're going to process everything that's moving and has action steps involved. We start with email, get your inbox to 0. That doesn't mean you have to act on every email right now. You'll jump over to your email inbox and you'll either act on it if it's quick and easy, if you haven't already. You'll put it into a folder or some designation. I use the starring or pinning to respond to later. So you're deferring it to a later action, or you're going to send it off to someone else and ask them to take care of it and delegate it. In one way or another, take some action on it. At the very least, put it into a folder that needs to be addressed later. But don't just let it pile up in your inbox. We'll do a video at some point on email because that can be a sticking point for a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be. It's pretty easy to manage. But once a week, get your box to inbox 0, or if you leave a few in, have a very good reason why you're leaving them in. Like you're going to be taking care of that really quickly. In my case, the defer for later goes into what is a starred or pinned email. And this is a reminder to look through those and process them. I'll go over to that box and I'll say, what can I take care of? What's already been taken care of? A lot of times they have been taken care of, but they just weren't unstarred in my box. Or if they've been lingering a long time, I'll create an action item in my task database to deal with it and to get that thing moving, take care of whatever it needs to be done. But at the very least, address them in there and deliberately ask what can be done to make things happen on the ones that are still there. Then calendar, look at the last couple weeks. Anything we need to follow up on? Look at the 3 or so weeks coming up, anything we need to prepare for, just so you don't miss anything on either end. Whatever comes up, you can add to your action list and put it into your due date cycle and take care of it. But now this is the point of the week where you take a look and you make sure nothing gets missed on your calendar, either follow-ups or planning. Then the pipeline databases. This is the Notion-oriented pipeline sequences. In my case, I first review and update the production pipeline and content machine. Those are the videos and articles and podcasts and media I'm creating. I've got a whole pipeline process for that. I'll do a whole video on that in the future. It's one of the templates I have available with my template pack if you're interested. But at this point, I'll go in and clean it up and update anything that wasn't updated even though it was completed. Make sure everything's in the right category in the Kanban pipeline and the different stages of process. Anything that's finished and needs to be marked as published, I'll enter the content into the body of the workspace of that content, the final content. If it was published, I'll enter the date it was published and a link to the published source, whether it's on YouTube or Medium or wherever, so that I have a really comprehensive and accurate record of everything that I've produced. So I take care of that here. If I haven't already earlier in the week, I just check on it. Then I'll go to the waiting on actions folder. Remember, in our daily action zone, we have a waiting on folder, things that we're stuck on until somebody else takes action on. We designate them as waiting in our process flow, and then we keep an eye on them. This is where we check on them. You can check on them during the week too, but you don't miss them ever because they're part of your weekly review. And now we get into some of the real efficiency designs of this template. We never have to jump out of this page to go over to the action zone because we have a toggle here with the database filtered for waiting. So everything waiting on, I just check by opening that toggle. It's that simple. And then I say, okay, I'll continue to wait. That's okay. I'll give them more time. Or if it's taking a long time, I think I need to follow up on that. So I'll change this to active, but before I do that, I need to assign a due date because once I change it, it's going to disappear. This is filtered for waiting. So I'll say, let's follow up on that on Friday, has the due date. Now I'll change it to active, disappears from here. It's queued up in my due date action system. So that's going to just flow into my daily activities when that day comes around. Take care of the ones we take care of, or just accept that we're going to continue waiting on the ones that we don't take care of. Either way, we've reviewed it. Next, project review. Evaluate where projects stand and have at least one next action for each. This is super important. This also has a toggle, and it opens the projects and it opens the quarters because we're trying to keep an eye on how we're managing accomplishments on a quarter-to-quarter basis. We're not looking at an annual timeline to accomplish our big goals. We're looking at quarterly timelines to accomplish big goals. So here, and this is probably the biggest and most important task of the whole process, we have our projects that are getting us toward our goal outcomes. And in the weekly review, we're making sure our projects and our tasks or our action items are properly queued up. So we determine in the monthly review which projects should be in progress and active. I do include the next ups in the filter. So I include everything except someday maybes in future. So I'll see the next ups, I'll see the in progress, and I'll see any projects on hold. I could activate a next up or an on hold if that makes sense. But most of the time I'm just looking at the in progress. I'm going to jump into each one quickly. Again, I'm continuing my search for the video editor. And so I open this up, I come down here and I look at the action items for that project. I make sure there's at least one action item for every project, sometimes 2 or 3, and that the rest are in logical order. And I think whether there are any that I need to add for that project. So I do a pretty quick but very effective review for each project and make sure there's at least one action item lined up. Now there is a new feature here that one of our viewers pointed out to me. His name's Anton Milanichev, and I'm super grateful because it was a really great addition. Small little tweak that gives us a nice feature. We now have an action items remaining for each project. This shows us the number of unfinished action items for each project. Previously, we had a field view that showed us all the action items, but it was impossible to filter it for completed versus not completed. Now we have an action item filter, and what we do is we have a roll-up, and in the roll-up, the relation is to the action items, which is the tasks database. The property is done, whether it's checked as done or not, and we calculate the unchecked. So you have various calculations you can apply. We calculate, which means total, the unchecked items. So now we have a running total for each project of how many action items are not completed. And as you complete one, it removes it. As you add one that's uncompleted, it adds to it. So it's a great glance as to how many you got going. This also tells me I need to add some. This is getting a little low on some of these. So I need to either they're getting close to completion, in which case I need to update the progress bar, or I need to add the ones that come subsequently. Sometimes I'll just put in the first few action items and I'll come back to it to add the later ones, which is the case here. So I need to add some of the subsequent action items. And I know that because I have this quick glance of how many action items are remaining for each project. But at this stage of the review, I'm going to jump into each project, each active in progress project, and make sure there's, most importantly, there's at least one action item, maybe 2 or 3, with due dates coming up in the next week or 2. And then the rest are nicely organized and sorted. And that way, every single project that has been designated as in progress, which can be done either, that designation can be done either here or in the monthly review. Every one of those has action items queued up to advance the project. This is super important. That's how you get projects done, and getting projects done is how you get goal outcomes completed. So very important, finish that review of each one. It doesn't take long because you've got it really organized and all queued up in each project. Check that off. So now planning is done. So now we go into daily tracking. We can either jump from this link over to the whole database, or even easier, we just open the toggle and it opens just what we need. Filter just for today. And with the one field, we enter in here weekly. That shows us that weekly tracking is done, just so you can see how this looks in the whole database. Again, this is every day, all the daily tracking. At the end, I keep track of when the weekly reviews were done, when the monthly reviews were done, and the quarterly. So we've got this ongoing record here of when our reviews were done, and it lets us know whether we're maintaining our obligation to ourselves to keep doing those updates and planning. So this just is part of the daily record, is whether or not we did a planning or review on that day. And it's super easy to enter from here just by opening that toggle. Presents today, all you do is pick the type of review you just did. And then at that point, you check that off. At this point, you need to add a new week for the next week. You hit new and you create a new week. You pick the date range by adding an end time. Pick the beginning, pick the end, enter it, title it, enter your objective and focus for the week, and then you're done with that. And the next week is up, so as you do your daily tracking, it'll be there to tag the relation. Now, finally, the vaults. So we've done the planning and the review. The vaults are all about cleanup and maintenance. So we'll check the desktop and download folders on our computer, empty and clean them. You know, your download folder gets all this junk added to it. You use it once, you install the application, you do whatever you're gonna do with it, and then it just sits there. You go through during your weekly review, delete everything that can be deleted, anything that's of use, put in a proper folder, in a place where you'll know how to find it that's well organized, or put it in one of your Notion vaults. So we check that off after we do it, clean our desktop in our downloads folder, again deleting or organizing and sorting in a proper folder. Then we have to clean up, I use Cloud App, you might use Loom for quick videos, you might use screen capture tools of various sorts. If you have a cloud version where your screen captures or your quick videos are saved, you go to that application and you delete all the ones that are no longer needed. Just keep all that stuff clean, then it's easier during the week to execute because you're not wading through all the clutter. Then at the end of this, you transfer any relevant high-value notes. I use Evernote clipping sometimes for my sort of endless vault. I use Notion for anything that's being worked on actively, and Evernote is just a bottomless pit I'll dump in. Makes it a little bit easier to find later if I turn out to want it, but if I'm not sure whether I'm going to want it or not, I don't put it in Notion. Notion is a higher bar to be included in my Notion vaults. Evernote is just dump it. If there's some possibility, I may try to find it later. If it turns out there's something I want, I move it over during the weekly review. If there are any high value notes anywhere in any other systems, if you use Todoist or Things, if you use any other app that might capture notes, this is the time you review that app and see if you should move any of those over to your vaults. In my case, particularly the Media Vault or the Knowledge Lab, both of which are vaults that we'll do videos on in the future. I'll have toggles right here for both the Media Vault and the Knowledge Lab. So the Media Vault will be articles and videos and podcasts I'm capturing. It's sorted for to do, means things I want to actually spend some time highlighting and summarizing. And then down lower, it'll be things that I did with a rating of the value. The Knowledge Lab is based on topics or themes. I'm developing knowledge on these topics and themes, and I'm collecting information from different sources, many times from the Media Vault, but also from conversations or my own thoughts, and aggregating all those ideas and thoughts and knowledge into these theme categories. So if I haven't already done so during the week and I have information or ideas or sources that need to be moved into either the Media Vault or the Knowledge Lab, I'll do that now. Check that off when it's done. Books. Are there any important book notes to move into the Book Vault? Are there any Kindle notes that I want to have imported into the Book Vault? You know, I'll take notes in my Kindle, highlight, and I'll actually add notes sometimes. And then Kindle on Amazon's website saves all that. You can just very easily copy paste that into your Book Vault as notes on anything you've been reading. Check that off when it's done. Any books that you finish, do a 30-second takeaway or 2-minute takeaway, whatever you're inspired to do, but some takeaway as a brief summarization of the book or the chapters of the book that you've read. And I've got a link here that opens the Book Vault. And then finally, we do the paper processing. I consider this part of the vaults. It's the paper vault. I do some paper journaling. If I do any of that, I may take a snapshot and add it here. Just upload a photo of the journal pages if it's something that I want to have easy access to. If there's anything that's come into my physical inbox, in my case, there's almost nothing that's physical except what comes in the mail. So if something came through the postal system, someone mailed me something in paper, it'll go in my inbox. I won't touch it until I get to my weekly review, at which point I'll open it, review it, and process whatever I have to review, whatever I have to process. And if there are any bills that come, that most of my bills are on autopay and taken care of electronically, but if there's anything that isn't, that comes through in the mail, then I'll take care of that at this time and check it off. So boom, 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 all of that's done. Weekly review is completed. And my life is in order, it's organized, it's on track. And that's it. It's not that complicated. It takes some discipline, but when you do this, this will put organization and clarity, and it'll relieve the burden of the worry of things just piling up, getting cluttered, getting messy. It's going to make you more effective every single day if you take just 20 to 30 minutes to do this at the end of the week. I cannot stress how important it is to do this to make your system operate effectively. Do this in the monthly review. If you haven't been doing that, it will be a game changer. Commit to it. Make it an absolute irrefutable habit and routine that you do. And as a result, you're going to be able to get so much more done. You're going to have so much more clarity. You're going to know you're working on the right things, and you're going to get there faster. So that's what this is all about. Weekly reviews are about tactical execution, aligning projects with task action items. Next week, we're going to look at the monthly review, which is more strategic. It aligns your higher level goals with which projects you want to have queued up to execute on those higher level goals. It's that simple. That's the game. Execution, strategy, and execution. So if this is of interest, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get updates on future videos. Leave thoughts or questions below, and hit like if you found this valuable. I also write a newsletter called Mind and Machine on increasing human capability. I give away several of my best Notion templates to anyone who subscribes to the newsletter. You can, of course, unsubscribe at any time, but I hope you'll give it a chance. I work super hard to pack it with a lot of valuable insight. The newsletter link is also below in the show notes. Thanks for watching. Lots more to come.